Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. Today's guest is Kathy McDaniel, author of MISFIT in Hell to Heaven EXPAT, which describes a dark near-death experience which taught her some valuable lessons. Kathy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, John. I'm very glad to be here.
What brought this on, I believe, was you're in the hospital, right?
I had been taking care of my best friend for 6 months while he went through leukemia treatments, and he and another caregiver were there. I got very run down in the process with the 24-hour caregiving, and so when a virulent flu came through, very much like COVID, I caught it, got pneumonia, and then went into ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is also known as lung failure. So they put me on a ventilator, stuck me in a drug-induced coma for 3 weeks, and somewhere in there, I slipped over to the other side.
And then from there, that's basically where the experience started. So according to your book, there is good parts about the experience and what you refer to as the dark NDE. Which one happened first?
Oh, let me just read you what that felt like. Just take a minute.
Sure.
It's in the book. It's called It Begins. I didn't feel dead, only confused. Total darkness and absolute silence. My only references. Not daring to move, I waited. The blackness morphed into a reddish glow, dragging with it a stinking heat, acrid fog, muffled moans, and ungodly shrieks. This can't be good. Something was staring at me. Like a blow, a voice thundered, "Do you know where you are?" My mind raced, searching for some rational explanation, but part of me already knew. "Hell?" I whispered. To my horror, the answer was an ear-splitting, maniacal laugh. The evil crept closer as I clamped shaking hands over my ears. Panic surged in me, triggering the requirement for fight or flight. Fighting was not an option. I turned and ran. So that was my introduction to the other side.
So that happened first. So you actually heard voices, you saw things, and it was pretty vivid, unlike some NDEs where some people see nothing or they describe a very pleasant feeling. Why do you think that the experience for you was actually a dark one?
I believe I chose to go to hell. I was a cradle Catholic, and we were taught that we would pay for our sins in purgatory, and then they would be burned off and we would go to heaven someday. So we were also taught that you could get so many days in purgatory for this venial sin or a mortal sin, but you could offset that by going to church extra times or saying a rosary or walking an old lady across the street. You know, you could get deductions. So it was this giant math problem, and I bought it, and I lived my life whereby if I did something wrong, I'd say, "Whoops, I'm going to pay for that in purgatory. Oh, well, I'll do something to offset it." So I think I lost track somewhere. With my own choice, I went to hell. It took me many years of retrospection to think, oh my gosh, some of the things that happened to me in hell were hellish experiences that I had on earth. So I did make my own hell. And what I learned later is that God is nothing but love. God forgives. God doesn't condemn. He doesn't send anybody to hell. So I learned the hard way that none of us have to go to hell.
So do you think that because you believed in the concept of hell, and this is obviously a much debated question, because the mere fact that you believed that it did manifest itself, or was it something else?
No, I think that's what happened. I think the dark experiences like I have, they're very low amount of them. Maybe as high as 20% have some sort of negative experience. The negative ones, you know, they're negative because I did get out and I did get to heaven, and that was great. I saw my friend that I've been caring for, and he was healthy and young and just full of life. Then I got the good experience. I got the real feeling of heaven, the exalted joy, the filled with love. It's just indescribable. It's just fabulous. My friend said that I had too much left to do. That was the end of that sentence. And then it dawned on me, oh my God, they're sending me back. And I thought, no, absolutely not. I will not go. And boom, I was gone.
So when you were there, you saw your friend, and that obviously gave you an impression of some type of afterlife, right?
Oh, yeah. I have no doubts at all. Heaven's where you want to go.
And it sounds like, I've heard this multiple times, that when you were in that space and you meet your friends or your family that passed, they appear younger in that space. almost in the prime. Is that what you found?
That's what I've heard too. And that's what happened because he looked horrible the last time I saw him, and he was 53. He appeared to me to be about 35 and young and happy. Most people report that.
I've heard that many times, which I think is incredible. I think it does give people some hope that when we die, it's not the end. Of course, there are consequences. Now, I don't want to dwell on the negative, dark, near-death experiences like the ones that you had. Let's say the person who's obviously not a good person, gangster, drug dealer, molester, whatever you want to call them, does not believe in hell in the concept. If you had to bet money, what experience do you think that person's going to have when he passes over?
I'm a judgmental person. God isn't. He's going to go to heaven. And the thing is, if you understand what's going on, we all start in heaven. We're all little pieces of God, little sparks of the Spirit. And we want to come to earth and sometimes to other places in the universe or other universes and learn lessons. And you can't do that in heaven. And nobody wants to just sit around and play a harp. You know, you want to do something. And so you choose what you want to learn. And then you choose your friends and spirits up there, and you all come down to earth and you go through all these experiences. You choose them to learn. And so when you get back, most people have a life review. I didn't get one. I wasn't there long enough. And it's not a judgmental thing. It's like looking at the test answers after you've taken a test and saying, oh, okay, I was really good in English, but I got to work on the math. Same thing, you know, I worked really well on being not judgmental, but boy, I really fell down in this area. You just get to observe. You just learn. So if you're a drug dealer or whatever, there's good and evil. I mean, there's light and dark. I believe there's evil in this world. And if people choose that evil, that they'll know when they get to heaven, that was not a good thing to do. That's just my understanding of it from talking to a lot of people.
So part of the cliff notes would be, do yourself a favor, if nothing else, disavow any belief in hell or anything of that realm. Am I right?
That's right. And the other thing I got is I had asked God for years, please tell me, I want to ensure this. Okay, if I throw hell out, what do I have to do? I'm here. I'm a human doing, not a human being. So it was, he told me in over a series of months in the voice, that's another thing, people come back with a clearer hearing of the voice. He said to be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. So I say that prayer every morning. And if it's too long for somebody to remember, just remember loving and kind. If every day you just wake up and say, no matter who I run into, what kind of guy that cut me off in traffic, the rude girl at the grocery store, respond with loving kindness. And you'd be surprised how that cuts evil off and makes the world a better place. So that would be the suggestion to not only being passive and saying, I'm not going to believe in hell, do the positive things that will ensure that you will have made this planet a better place.
Exactly. Those qualities that you mentioned, and the ones that tend to stick out the most are love, forgiveness, compassion. And if you practice love, compassion, and forgiveness, you're going to want to give, you're going to want to do things for people and do the right thing because it makes you feel good and makes them feel good. I know it sounds oversimplistic, but
no.
in these cases, it happens over and over and over again, hundreds, thousands of the NDEs. When you were there, and I want to circle back to the question about the evil person that basically seems to go straight to heaven. Maybe it's debatable, maybe it isn't, and I'm probably never going to know until I actually pass over. But what kind of clues did you get or hint of reincarnation?
Yeah, all I know is what other people tell me too, and it just strikes a chord that if we come down once to learn things and we want to learn them again another time, that's reincarnation. So you choose to go down again. Going back to that terrible person, they get a life review. And in that life review, they not only get to see everything they did every second, but how it impacted other people. And they get to feel that whatever it is. So if you were a rapist and a mugger and then you get to feel the pain, the fear, whatever that person felt, you get to feel it. And so for somebody like Hitler, it's going to take a long time to feel all that pain. So you don't worry about it because you want your life review to be as good as it can be and not worry about other people's because I don't want to say they're going to get theirs, but they're going to understand and actually experience what they put out.
You get what you give.
Yeah.
Right? If you get what you give, let's say someone like Al Capone or, a gangster, I'm just grabbing at these stereotypes. Someone who has obviously killed many people, caused lots of pain to not only that person, but the families. They have to experience what they did to other people. That could be their version of hell, could it not?
Oh, exactly. But it's put in the form of a lesson. This was not a good thing you did because this resulted. So, and there's another weird thing that goes on with that. And it has to do with helping other people learn lessons. So sometimes people will do such and such in this life. Like I've been raped. And so that person caused me pain, but my empathy for other people who have been in that situation came from that experience. Same thing when my baby died. She was only 2 days old. That was a crushing blow. I was furious at God for that one until I learned that my baby just chose to be here for 2 days. And that empathy that I drew from going through that experience helped me with several of my friends who lost babies. I actually could feel what they were feeling. So sometimes those bad experiences give you a positive outcome.
Well, if it helps you experience empathy, then that's making a positive out of a negative. So while you were in this state, which I believe was it for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
What about the experience? Were you able to tell this isn't my imagination? This isn't a fever dream?
Well, the thing about that is you experience that in your soul, in your psyche. You don't experience it with your brain, your physical body. I was given something called white amnesia while I was in the coma so that I couldn't remember anything that happened to me. They were going to be poking and prodding and doing things to me, and they didn't want me to remember that trauma. So I didn't. But I remember every second of my time on the other side 21 years later, and my memory is not that good anymore, but that doesn't leave me because I experienced that in my soul.
Unlike a dream that you can forget minutes later after you wake up.
Exactly.
Happens to just about everybody.
Yeah. But this is different. If you talk to anybody that have had an experience, it's burned on your soul and not in your brain.
That's what I've heard. There's usually no doubt whatsoever.
Yeah. And it's okay. It gives you such faith. It's so freeing to know that heaven's there. It really is. And you'll see your friends. And my dad just passed a week ago, COVID. He was almost 97. And we had lots of talks in the last several years about being in heaven. He was scared he would go to purgatory or whatever. And I said, don't worry about it. You're going to go straight shot, man. There's no problem there. And it was just such a comfort for me when he passed to know he's still there. And people on the other side can communicate with you. He played a trick on me right out of the basket there. I was going to put a very solemn post on Facebook because my dad had a lot of friends and my family. And I just wanted something peaceful and respectful to go out. So I posted 500 times on Facebook, and you push this button and it gives you a blank piece of paper, which it was. And then you write what you want and you hit, post. And well, I did that. And what comes up but this pizza party? There's an avatar of me, and I don't even know how to make an avatar, eating a piece of pizza. There's hot dogs and pizza. I was horrified. I thought, oh my God, my mother's going to kill me. And then in my own head, I heard my dad laughing, and he didn't want anything solemn after he died. He wanted a party. He wanted it to be upbeat. And I thought, he did that. It was really amazing. I just still feel he's there. I mean, I'll miss seeing him, but I know I'll see him again soon enough. I'm 74. I mean, I'm not going to live forever either.
When you just mentioned that you're still able to communicate with him, do you think that this experience opened up something in you, or since you've kind of crossed into the veil, is that some kind of, not a superpower, but is that an ability that you have now since the experience, or was it always there?
I didn't get responses like I'm getting now. A lot of people say that once you go over there, you get a brighter bulb when you're back here. I've got certain abilities that I didn't have before. I can kind of tell what somebody's going to say before they say it. I watch television, and 2 or 3 seconds before something happens, I know what happens, and I say it out loud, and my partner just, oh my, would you not tell me what's going to happen all the time?
Maybe you should go into Jeopardy or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Or get picking your numbers for the lotto. I don't think that would work. But no, it is more cute. And that voice I'm talking about, everybody's got that voice. And I just read a wonderful book about that. It's called Clear Ears. And it explains the voice and how people that go over on the other side, they can hear it a little bit better. And the super thing about that book, it says it wasn't God, it wasn't the angels, because I always thought it was my guardian angel or something. It's the super you. In other words, you and I, everybody is a perfect being in heaven, and we go down to learn things, but it's not our whole soul that goes down. It's just part of us that goes down. So our real self is always keeping an eye on us to make sure we're on the right path. I thought that was cool.
Incredibly cool. So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit more about some of your abilities that you've inherited since the experience?
Yeah, I think I can tell when somebody is needing to talk. I had this thing on airplanes for a while when we were still traveling. Every month I'd go down and see my parents, and so I had a trip down and a trip back, and probably 80% of the time I got to where I could predict who was going to sit next to me on the plane. And it was usually the most obnoxious person in the waiting room. You know, the one that wants to get their ticket changed at the last minute, the one that bought their dog. You know, you could see him up there and I think, oh, crud, I'm going to have this person sitting next to me. Every time they sat right next to me. But the thing that was so interesting was, generally when I travel, I stick my nose in my Kindle because I don't really like to talk to people. But every single time they would turn to me and say, so what are you doing down here in San Jose? And I'd say such and such. And I'd say, what about you? And they'd say, well, my dad passed away, or we had to put my mom in a home, or there was some big disaster. And they'd say they were worried about it. And I'd say, let me just say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but let me just say that I've been to heaven and I know your loved one is going to be there waiting for, wait, did you say you went to heaven? And we would talk the entire 2 hours, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'd get off the plane. They'd follow me out. They'd give me a hug. They'd give me their email address. They'd introduce me to their husband that was picking them up and say, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't run into you today. That's always the clue that, I was sent back because I had too much left to do. It was like, what? Give me a clue. Well, that's my clue. If somebody says, I really needed to talk to you today, then I can chalk one off of my list and I'm sooner going to get to heaven. Yeah, that's one of the major things I've noticed is I have this empathy that I can, especially for people who are going through the loss. I worked in hospice for quite a while after I got back because I loved being near dead people. I mean, that we're going to go to heaven. I was so jealous. And I would tell them that. This one little old guy, he was not happy to be passing away. His family wasn't there. He was scared. And I just looked at him. He was my patient and I had to keep him from getting up and running out of the room. And I says, I am so jealous. And his eyes got huge. And he says, what? And I says, I started telling him about it. You're going to see your family and they're all going to look young and you're going to be so happy. And he says, okay. And I says, what? He says, let me settle down. I want to get ready. It just totally changed everything for him, So there's been a lot of gifts, just being kind and listening and being aware. And I guess I'm just kind of hyper aware, but that's good.
It's very good. So for one, you are almost like an empathy magnet. You attract people that need to connect with someone that's going to give them comfort. And you're very certain that when we pass, we are going to be reunited with our loved ones, our friends in the past. And they're going to look cool. They're not going to look, even if they were 80 or 70 or whenever they passed, they're going to look like they're in their prime.
Well, that's because we don't have a body up there. You're just your pure spirit. I think you probably can look any way you want, but most people are going to choose that.
Yeah, they're going to look good.
Like babies. I've got a baby up there and I thought, my dad, when he was just getting ready to pass, I said, now be sure and give her a kiss for me and tell her I love her. And he says, but I won't recognize her. I says, she'll find you. Don't worry about it. I haven't seen a baby. I know people see dogs and cats. They see their pets. And that's extremely...
That's very cool.
Oh, yeah. It makes people feel so much better.
I think of my Siamese cat that passed away. Sometimes I think, am I ever going to see Evo again? Because I can kind of hear him purring. And I was pretty torn up when he passed.
Oh, I know. I can't have another dog. I'm telling you, they're worse than losing a kid. It's awful, but no, they'll be there. Everybody says that they've seen them. This one lady used to raise dogs. She breeded her. And when she got to heaven, she was looking on, she was this beautiful shore, and up comes, she can see this thing in the distance. And it turned out to be a pack of dogs. And it was all her dogs that she ever had. And they were jumping on her and wanting to be petted. And, that was her heaven right there.
How cool is that if more people can actually learn that, for one, it's not the end. Two, as long as you're a decent person, your experience usually should be pretty good. It can be anywhere from pretty good to incredible. But the most important thing is that you do get to meet your family and your friends again. And you might have to come back with them again because some of these souls travel in groups, do they not?
Yeah, you've got your home group. And it's funny to think that this time this person is your brother, the next time he'll be your son, next time he'll be the guy next door. But you travel in kind of a group. And one of the cool things, again, that I heard is sometimes you go through life and you run into somebody at a party or someplace and you go, I know you. Don't I know you from somewhere? And they go, no, I don't think we've ever met, but you sure seem familiar. That's a clue. That's one of your soulmates. And you planned to meet at that time for a particular reason, just to check in.
Maybe it's a well-worn phrase, but God puts certain people in your path for a reason. When you gravitate towards some person and just feel immediately comfortable with them, it's probably a good bet that you've known them before.
Right. Rather than God he doesn't interfere. God's not a he. Well, he just lets us have our free will. And you choose your soulmates. And sometimes they're people that you don't get along with at all. They're going to cause a lot of trouble in your life, but you planned that. And that person who loved you says, oh, I don't want to go down and be the person that does such and such. And you say, come on, I want to learn this lesson. Next time I'll do it for you. It's just such a friendly, positive way to live. It's very freeing.
That's amazing.
I'm very grateful I had that experience.
You know what that reminds me of? And I think I might have told you this before. I was watching, I believe it was Beyond Belief with George Norrie, and his guest was Richard Martini, who's written tons of books on this. One, I believe, is called Hacking the Afterlife. And he describes where this person was in the life between life state, right? And he comes across friends and family that have passed, like you just described. And he also meets some people that he didn't like very much. And one of them was an uncle. And the uncle figure finally comes up to him. And this person realizes he did not like the uncle in the last life. And the uncle says, don't you remember? We agreed on that.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like a play, really.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a play.
We are only players, performers, and portrayers.
Exactly.
Right. I don't know if you're a rock fan, but the band Rush, the drummer who just passed, his name is Neil Peart. He wrote the lyrics to Limelight. And I just quoted that, which is, we are only players, performers, and portrayers. The drummer, he was ridiculously talented, but I also thought he was a pretty deep person. And I think he was talking about something layers deeper than just being a rock star. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. This time around, he was a rock star. Who knows what he was before.
He wrote lyrics for a reason. I never did forget that. It's amazing stuff, but I talk to people in my civilian life, and when I talk about near-death experiences, they don't want to talk, and they almost feel threatened, which is a shame, because if more people really understood this and embraced it, how much better would they feel?
Well, there's been so many thousands of people that have had them, and we were laughing, a couple of us that have had experiences, that pretty soon there's going to be a tipping point where more people have them than don't. And then that will be a real good day for humanity.
I believe we're actually getting closer to that tipping point. We have to be. We talk about this. We talk about moving from the third density up into the fourth and the fifth and so on. It has to happen sooner or later. And speaking of which, during your experience, did you get a hint of what we are going to be facing here on Earth sometime soon in terms of moving away from the third density and forward or higher?
All I remember is seeing this big open book on a table, and my friend had been showing me things in this book. And then when I got back, I couldn't remember a thing. So that's pretty common, unless you're maybe a prophet or someone that's their job to bring this back. Sometimes I think it's best that we don't know what's going to happen. You just live your life the best you can, and then let the universe take care of itself. I don't know if I would want to know some of that stuff. we chose to be here in 2020. I had COVID. My partner had COVID. my mom, dad, sister, brother-in-law, and then my dad passed away from it. Why did we choose to come down here during this time? Well, I'll figure it out when I get home. It'll all be clear.
I like that.
I think we're very brave. We're very brave souls to be here right now in this whole
in this century.
Unsettled world.
Right.
We're very brave souls.
I guess we will know the truth when we get home. So earlier you had mentioned that when you were in your experience, you actually saw physical buildings and surroundings and people and activities.
Yeah, in my hell. Yeah, I did. In fact, I even saw 2 living people that were in my family, which was confusing. But it turned out I had to give them messages about their lives. And one person didn't take it well. I mean, how do you open that conversation? Gee, last week I was in hell and I saw you there. That didn't go over. She broke our relationship off. And then the other person heard what I had to say. And 15 years later said, tell me again what you saw. And I told her, and she says, my gosh, that was really a metaphor for what was going on in my life. And she says, it almost killed me. It was so depressing and overwhelming. She says, wow, I'm amazed that you saw that then. But
that's a new one, seeing a living person during your experience.
Very unusual.
It's very confusing too.
Well, yeah, because I thought I was alive when I was in hell, and there's 2 people I know that are alive. I really didn't know till the very end, the last one, when I was there, it finally had dawned on me that I might not get out of there. I was not through fighting, but I was tired. Made some comment to the demon that was going to make us do some terrible things. And I says that, I've been here quite a while, and it seems like a particularly depressing day. And she said, well, it's Christmas on earth and it's always the worst day in hell. So she said the word hell. And that kind of shocked me. Being the brat I was, the misfit I was, I started singing a Christmas carol. That did not go over well. The people there with me started singing, and this demon person is flailing and coming at me. And right when we got to, I didn't realize this till I got home. It was away in a manger. And it says, the little Lord. The minute I started to go to the next word is when I got thrown out. So I thought that was interesting.
What was the transition of you leaving the hellish place and either going back to heaven or back to your life? What was it?
Well, generally there is a transition place. So I found myself in a nice meadow with the stream, and I felt like I needed to follow the stream. Well, it went downhill, and it was really pretty. One of those like you see in Colorado with the boulders in it, the fish are running around, and it sounds so lovely. So I was walking down, and I met 3 ladies, one after the other. They were speaking a foreign language. It sounded familiar, but I didn't know what they were saying, and they were giving me things. The first lady gave me a quilt, and then somebody else had homemade nighties that she'd made, and then somebody else gave me something else, and they would point me down the stream, keep going down the stream. So I'm carrying all this stuff and it's trying to step on rocks and not fall. And I got down to the bottom, and the last lady who gave me the last gift says, she had a note, and she says, give this to this person I was dating at the time and tell him you must live together. So I've now got all this stuff. That's when I woke up. It was so weird to be in a completely different place. I was laying down, my eyes were open, and I could see my family, which I was trying to figure out who was who and what was what and why they were there. They were around my bed, and my son-in-law says, oh, Mother's back. And my daughter turned around and says, oh, I wanted to be the first thing she saw when she woke up. And I'm, what's going on? I couldn't talk because I had that ventilator thing in my throat, and I had oxygen and tubes everywhere, and I couldn't move. All I could move was one finger, and I could blink. My muscle mass had gone. I weighed 86 pounds. I'd been laying flat for 3 weeks. I couldn't do a thing. So I went from heaven to that. I wasn't happy. I really wasn't happy. It took me 6 months to get grounded enough to accept the fact that I was stuck here until I got everything done. When I finally went to a therapist, she just put PTSD at the top of my chart. She says, you've been through an awful lot, and it's going to be a long time.
That's where the heaven expat in your title comes from.
Yeah, we all start off in heaven, and expatriates or expats are people who live one place and they go work in another country or another place. When they're finished with their work, they go back to their home. So we're all heaven expats.
Quite an experience. It's really something I don't have the manual for, which is one of the reasons I started the show in the first place, is to ask questions like this. So,
Yeah.
Kathy, how do our listeners find you online?
Well, I have a website, and it's www, and then the title of the book, Misfit in Hell, to heavenexpat.com. And then the book's available on Amazon.
Right.
And then I really recommend people look up IANDS, IANDS.org. I'm going to have it's kind of a chat room, something they have several kinds of ways for you to interact with IANDS and learn more. And this is going to be for people who have had near-death experiences that are dark, only for them. My program will be that. And that'll be the first Sunday of the month. I'm not sure when it starts. But I want to shout out to all those people who have been on ventilators and had COVID. You're a likely suspect for someone to have gone over to the other side. Most doctors aren't going to believe you. Your family's not going to want to talk about it. So get a hold of IANDS. They save money.
And we'll definitely put a link in addition to your personal links in the show notes as well. That sounds very cool. Kathy, thanks so much again for joining us. You've been listening to the Closer to Venus podcast. I'm Johnny Burke. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.